This is the video answer for exercise 2 of Project Orion. So in this exercise we want to configure group update provider. As we've seen on exercise 1, live update server was a bit complex and it's not matching Solusa's requirement. So here we're going to elect WCWS02 as a group update provider. So we're going to the policy view for the live update policy. We're going to edit live update setting policy, and under server settings we can go on group update provider. So we select this, open group update provider, and in multiple group update provider, that's where we elect which client becomes a group update provider. Click on add. We're going to use comparator IP address or host name, add, and we're just going to put the name. So those names could be with wildcard. If we wanted, let's say, all server, we can put SRV star, and then all servers. If you have a naming convention for your systems that have start with the same letters, you could use that. Here we're specific, we're using one client. Okay, so the client is added. We can be a bit more specific and add an additional criteria just to be sure that we are not having any machine called WCWS02. Want to make extra sure, so we can add an additional role. It has to be an operating system, and then we can say, okay, it has to be a Windows 10 machine. So we're selecting here. And now the system has to be named WCWS02 and run Windows 10. So this is the first part. So now we know who is a group update provider. The next part is to define who can use the group update provider. So we have to go to explicit group update provider, add, and here we are going to the subnet that we have in our Solusa network, so 10.10.2.0, and then we can specify which client are using a GUP. Okay, so every client that's sitting in this network will use a GUP. So you can select the IP address of that GUP, or you can put the name. So now we're going to be specific again. We want to use WCWS02, and the port will be using TCP 2967, which is the default port we advise here. And this would have its importance later on when we check if the client is listening correctly, if it's enabled. Okay, so configure this. Now we have, so who is a GUP and who can use a GUP. Okay, so that's all for this configuration so far. So we click OK twice, and we wait a few minutes for the configuration to be sent to our client, and then we will be switching to WCWS02. So we are now on the newly elected group update provider. So we're going to verify that the feature is enabled. So if you remember, normally the port TCP 2967 is listening. And then we're gonna trace to know which process, if it's a Symantec process, that's actually listening on that port. So to do that, you open a command prompt. You type netstat -anop space TCP. So we want to have a list of all listening ports, and we parse it specifically for TCP connections, and the P will show us as well the PID, the process ID for the application, the process that's using this port. So here, when we look here, we see a list, and we have, in this example, port 209067, so that's a good sign. We mean we are listening, and the PID is 1748. So if I'm going now to the task manager, I'm going to detail. I see that the process 1748 is CCSVC host. That's a Symantec process. Okay, so that's the way for you to validate if the group update provider is activated, because you have the listening part and you know that it's traced back to a Symantec process. Second way to check this, so you open the SEP client, going on view logs, client management, and we're going to look at system log. And here we should see normally start serving as a group update provider. Okay, so that shows the feature for group update provider is enabled on this client. So next, we need to validate that other clients can use the GUP. So for that, we need to go back to the SEP management server and look at the monitor view. So let's go. So on the server, going on the monitor view, we're going under log. This time we're going to look at client activity. So under system, and then we have client activity. Going to make an advanced filter so that we look at event source here. Instead of star, we look for GUP. And in this list, we can see that we have number of group update provider changed. So that means that other clients have seen that we have a new group update provider to be using. That's the first tree in here. And then we have start serving as group update provider. So we validate again the log entry we've seen on locally on WCWS02. So with those verification, this concludes exercise 2 of Project Orion.